witnesses to this. We have Wi-Fi in about 3 feet of it. And we have and I don't know if this has anything to do with it.
Yeah.
But we have the cabin I bought Mom here on the farm has a gigantic old-fashioned television antenna, but not the skinny kind, but one on a iron, steel grid.
Yeah.
And it goes up. It must go up 30, 40 feet.
Wow.
And maybe more than that. No, more than that. Probably about 50 feet. It dominates the mountain, and it's attached to the house. And we couldn't take it down. And I don't know if that has anything to do with it, but there is and I am in the corner by the closet against one wall, and that's the only place we have any Wi-Fi.
Well, you sound good.
Hey,
you sound good.
Well, good. I probably look like death warmed over.
Listen, any friend that I haven't seen since this pandemic started looks good to me. It's good just to hear your voice and even see you virtually.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I've talked with a couple of people I hadn't seen since this started, and I'm always grateful to see them vertical.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you spoke of your mother. How is her health? Hopefully,
she's
through the year.
She was doing good until just recently. She's had a little problem. We think maybe she pulled something or a muscle in her leg, and for the first time in her life, she's kind of hobbling around. Usually she moved like a motor scooter around here. But other than that, she's okay.
Tell her vicarious friends in Tupelo ask about her.
I will tell her.
She's as famous as you are, of course. And
well, she's a lot more. I tell you what, she's a whole lot more welcome around here than I am.
Well, I was talking to another author about a Mississippi town not too long ago. A fellow named Richard Grant has written a story about Natchez, Mississippi, and
right.
I was talking to a guy whose mother lives in Natchez in it, and he said, well, he treated Mama pretty nice, but I don't think he's going to be invited to a lot of other parties in Natchez. So
yeah, the one thing you can't really worry about if you write nonfiction books about home is you can't really worry about how many cocktail parties you might miss. Of course, we don't have cocktail parties around here anyway.
Well, now, do y'all still have a lot of cats that have joined you in your sheltering in place up there?
Yeah, and I would like to make an appeal to all your readers that if they want a cat, we have one for them. We have little gray cats and smoke-colored cats and calico cats, and the original 13 might have multiplied. And because they are outdoor cats, getting them caught and fixed, spayed and neutered, has been a bigger challenge than I am up to right now.
Okay.
But we got to do something about it. So if anybody wants a cat and feels like driving over here, we'll give them all the cats they want.
Well, your readership is listening to this live right now, so almost live, not yet. We're still loading up. We'll wait a few minutes before I just ask these deeply penetrating questions. But have you? Again, I read that LA Times article. I think that was in April.
Right.
You were, of course, we were all in April, just absolutely sheltering in place wherever we were. We had the worst. Our store is 115 years old this year. My granddaddy opened in 1905, and this is the only time we've been just dead closed for 7 weeks. It was just a strange time. It was like the store was almost a museum. It was full of books, full of clothes, pulling the new spring shoes and things, Easter clothes for children.
Right.
And my office manager and I were the only two people here for 7 weeks. It was just, but fortunately, we're insisting, even I'm not wearing a mask now because I'm not around people. We're insisting on masks for our staff and our customers.
Right.
And
Good.
We're safely, we've been safely open now, and knock on wood, we'll be, hopefully can continue that combination of safely open. That's really what
Right.
we do.
Well, that's the only, I really do believe that that's the only chance we have, is to, if not shelter in place, at the very least, wear our mask and use some common sense. And 3 old rednecks up in Piedmont, Alabama, wanted to fight me over my mask. I was walking into the grocery store.
Yeah.
And one of them said to me, "Who do you think you are, Darth Vader?" and I, there was a time in my life where I might have thought, well, I got a lot to lose here, so I really don't need to walk up and.
Yeah.
But then I got to thinking to myself, you know what? I'm 61 years old. I've survived cancer and so far kidney failure and all this. So I thought, I really don't have a lot to lose. So I walked up to the car and said, and I can't say because we might go online just about the minute that I say it, but I used a few, choice words, words that you probably would not hear at prayer meeting.
Yeah.
And I told him that I had an 83-year-old mother at home. And besides that, I wasn't stupid. and then I might have mentioned I'd drag him out of there. But anyway, it felt real good. And he seemed to be scared, and his buddies seemed to be scared. So it made me feel good.
Yeah. Well, that's a lot of times a bully just needs to be addressed.
It made me feel, hadn't felt that good in a long time.
Well, I'm glad. Yeah, we have those opportunities around here too still. But I will say, and I tell our staff, they say, well, people say, I'm not wearing a mask in there. It's a free country. I say, well, just blame it on me. Say, well, I'm sorry, I'll lose my job if Mr. Reed's just insisting that we wear them. And I had a young man in the other day that was getting fitted he was in a wedding. We were doing the suits for his friend, the groomsman, and he didn't want to put one on. I said, sir, we've got some free masks right here. I'll give you one. I don't need one. I said, well, you do. And the man that was fitting him is 73 years old and in good health. But my first duty is to our staff, honestly, and my second, almost equal duty, is to our customers, of course. And I said, I said, as a courtesy to you, but absolutely honoring Mr. Rush, who's going to be helping you, I'm just going to have to insist you put on the mask. And he reluctantly put it on like he was making one of the great sacrifices of his life to do it. But anyway. Well, listen, on your book, I was going to say that our motto is Reed's Gumtree Bookstore, where readers and writers meet in Tupelo, Mississippi. It's nice now that at least we can still meet, even though it's virtually. So
absolutely.
I just want to thank you for making the time to do this. And we just had a lady that came in 10 minutes ago that was buying your book. She said, he's my favorite. Rick is my favorite author. Said every time he's come here, we've gotten to meet him and see him and visit with him. And said, I'm running home right now to get on Facebook and Zoom to see him. So you certainly are not forgotten in the Northeast Mississippi Tupelo region. Your reputation, and I'm so glad you were able to, and your editors were able to come up with this collection for this year to give us something to shout about. So we've got this Where I Come From. Do you know the music Mac McAnally, Back Where I Come From? You know that song?
I sure do.
That's what I was thinking of. I didn't know if that was just a throwback or that was just both a common theme. But he's a wonderful songwriter and musician. And
he is. He's an old-fashioned wordsmith. Yeah.
He is. But that your title reminded me of that too. We've got just for the viewership, we've got 300 signed first editions. The reason now that we don't have that many now because we put them out 2 days ago and we're going, but I do want to thank you for signing them and keeping your fandom here in the Hill Country open. But I thought what might be fun for people, I just run through. I read the book. I've got it. I'll just show people here. I don't know if you can see it. I had it printed off, copied from the digital, so I could have read it before our interview.
Oh, okay.
So I've got basically a notebook of it, but it just kind of running through some of my favorite things and maybe let you comment on them, and any
Sure.
stream of consciousness you've got, take it away. People don't want to hear from me. They want to hear from you.
Sure.
One of the earliest stories that you alluded to, something that reminded me of my childhood, was my mother collecting green stamps.
Yeah.
At the service station. At the service station and at I guess the grocery store or something. I just, that's those days gone by, but I hadn't thought about green stamps in, 50 years probably.
Well, an editor asked me not too long ago, he said, what is it that makes people cleave to those stories? When you're not really uncovering anything new, they're not really reported, they're just remembered.
Yeah.
Most of those essays are just remembered. I've finally gotten so old that it takes me to remember more than go out and find something. But I told him that nostalgia is a power. It's not just some sweet thing that, down here, nostalgia is a power. And green stamps, I still remember the things you could get.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not going to say they were necessarily high-end items.
No.
They were not high-end items, but you might get a toaster.
Yeah, I was gonna say the one thing I remember we got was a toaster. That's in that funny.
Yeah. Or you might get a really good. I remember getting a lady cooking shrimp at the White's Gap church, and I said, that sure is a good electric skillet you got there. And she said, yeah, I got it with green stamps. Yeah. And but you get a garden hose, with green stamps. So
they're pretty practical. They're pretty practical items. It was kind of a mini Sears Roebuck catalog, that you'd look at for Christmas. That was kind of the other version, I guess, of wish list kind of thing.
Yeah, I saw the other day that you could actually order a Sears and Roebuck catalog from the 1950s.
Yeah.
From like some avant-garde, fancy.
Just for what you're talking about, just for the memories,
Yeah.
Well,
you could get a shotgun. You could get I think you could get a coffin. I think you get a shotgun or a coffin. You could get like a dog. You could order like a cattle dog or a black and tan. Well, I'm sorry. We'd get off on that. We never get home. So
I don't remember my parents showing me the dog. I remember more of the, the toy items. They must have been afraid I for the dog if they'd show that. Well, dude, I noticed that you had a couple of choice words for two of our great southern cities, and my daughter lives in Birmingham. My son lives in Atlanta, so I'm not throwing off on them, but the two, I guess, most commonly frustrating things, your comments about trying to fly out of Birmingham and then trying to drive around Atlanta, when you said that you thought more truck drivers had been sent to the cardiologist by traffic in Atlanta than any other, than heart disease or something.
Yeah, the
than Little Debbie's. That's what you said. More
than Little Debbie's. Yeah. More of my people have been killed by Little Debbie's than were ever killed by Yankee bullets. So I love. Obviously, I chose to live here.
Yeah.
You know, my mom is here. My brothers are here. I chose to live here, but uh, the South has a serious breakdown in the travel department. The Atlanta airport used to work miracles with getting people
Yeah.
through. Now it seems designed to give me a mild stroke. But the Birmingham airport, and I wish them the best. I hope that, but Southwest just dropped Birmingham like a hot potato.
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah, and when they dropped Birmingham, there went the flights to direct, easy flights to New Orleans, to Texas, Baltimore, up into the north, into the, when I got this offer to do this speaking gig, and every now and then people of very poor judgment will bring me in to do a speaking gig.
You've been to Tupelo, but be careful now.
Well, I'm not saying you're not a fine man, but if I was ever brought in to speak, it was poor judgment.
Okay.
But I remember, sitting there one day, and this sounds really fancy, but a speaking agent, kind of a headhunter, called me up and said, "Hey, you wanna go to Hawaii on a paid trip to talk, and you get to stay a week, and you can do whatever you want to when you're not talking." And every place I've ever been, my passport says Pakistan.
Yeah.
or Haiti.
Yeah,
it doesn't say. Yeah, it doesn't say Waikiki, and
there's no war.
So
there's no war going on in Hawaii.
Right. So I got very excited, and it was January, and January ain't the best time to be in Alabama, and I got so excited, and I had pictured myself on a surfboard gliding into the, gliding up on the shore, and somebody'd hand me a coconut full of rum drinks and put a lee around my neck.
Yeah.
Or lay, I guess. And I never got out of Birmingham. I mean, they canceled 2 full days of my flight.
Right. Yeah.
And finally they said, "Yeah, we can fly you back there with the hogs and cargo." And I thought about 6,000 miles of that. So I made a management decision to just stay home. And instead of going to Hawaii, I went to the Chick-fil-A in the Birmingham airport.
That is a good Chick-fil-A. I've eaten there. Good.
Yeah, it's a very fine Chick-fil-A, but it's not like
it's not
Maui.
Hawaii. It's not to be no.
Right.
It's not open on Sunday. It's not open on Sunday.
Yeah, see, you're just burning on Sunday.
Well, one of the I think one of my favorite stories was your visit to Harper Lee, and I think some of our age that grew up in our time and that just the whole To Kill a Mockingbird thing. It was interesting. Your favorite line in that book and movie was exactly mine. Is when stand up, Miss Jean Louise, your daddy is passing by, and in the balcony.
Right.
And that just, but that was sweet. Talk a little bit about I wish I had had an opportunity to meet Harper Lee. Tell us about that.
Well, what I wrote in she actually wound up being the only person in the collection that got 2 stories, about her. And, But I had not been one of those Southern writers who went and sat on her porch steps hoping for a few minutes. That book was probably the most influential that I ever read. Not just because it had a great sermon in it, but it had it's just a great story. It was great writing.
Yeah.
A great drama. And but I never did go see her because I didn't want to be one of them folks bothering her. And and as she got more and more frail, a mutual friend of ours, Wayne Plant, had said, you need to go see her. She had sent me a signed book, and she had been very kind about my own work.
Well, but I of you as a fellow Alabama storyteller.
Well, I hope so. And so I went to see her in her little retirement community, and I walked in the door, and she's just she looked so small, there on the edge of her bed, and just like any other older Alabamian, the room was 157 degrees, and she kind of looked at me through her thick glasses and said, talking to this couple from Auburn. And when they walked away and I came up to her and said hello, she motioned me close, and she leaned in and said, "There go the only two people from Auburn I could ever stand." But
she still had her sense of humor, obviously.
She still had her sense of humor, and she, she had never seen the Harper Lee Award given in her name, and it's a big old beautiful bronze clock tower from there in Monroeville, which plays such a part in the book. And she said, I've never seen that award. So we went and got it. Went out to the trunk of the car, and lugged it in. It's as big as a howitzer shell. It's a French 75. Yeah. And I carried it in, and I reached out to hand it to her, and it dawned on me at the very last second, she can't hold this. Yeah. I mean, it's 40 pounds,
Wow.
And I thought to myself, that would have been my legacy. I would have killed Harper Lee. I would have just killed her. And when she passed, I'll never, when she passed, I was just so grateful that I did that.
Yeah.
That I got to go in and see her, and for just a few minutes, it was, I covered Bear Bryant, back in the football days.
Yeah.
And I didn't cover him very much, and I didn't cover him very well. And when he died, they sent me to interview the man who dug his grave. But our truck broke down in Irondale.
Yeah.
And we wound up going to a Mexican restaurant while they worked on the transmission. So we never made it. We never made it to that kind of last rite.
Yeah, that story is one of your collections, is in the book. Yeah, I read that.
But it reminded me of that. Yeah, that if I hadn't,
some of the giants around, we had around here, I guess, was William Faulkner and Eudora Welty, probably.
Sure.
The Mississippi of that greatest generation of that, the 40s, 50s.
Sure.
50s. Well, I noticed one of the stories was kind of showing your sense of humor about what I would call faux Southerners, of the people that wanting to be, impersonating Southerners, I guess maybe is how you described it. Something you said, one of them thought that George Strait was a land bridge between Russia and Alaska.
Yeah, I was writing about the tomato sandwich. How I think that was it. How people make fun of us for a lot of people will ask me, "What do y'all eat down there?" Yeah. Like it, I'm going to say bugs or dirt.
Yeah.
And I tell them that it always boggles their mind when I say, well, a tomato sandwich on white bread with mayonnaise, salt, and pepper.
Yeah.
And if you really want to send, a big pile of potato chips and a glass of milk. And now that is not health food,
No.
but but it's, you know, it's a genuine part of who we are. And the boy, especially the young people, they just almost fall out on the floor. They
I know
think
white bread. I mean, that's so,
yeah,
you know, they're no, you know, that's just calories or whatever. You know, that's all.
yeah, oh yeah.
Speaking of that story, I wanted to just again, and I've gotten a note that I think all of our audio is coming through. For some people, some of the video is not. So we will have this just for people who are listening. We'll have this entire thing, audio and video, on our Reed's Gumtree Bookstore website as soon as this is over. But people want to keep listening, and some are watching too. But the if you are watching, I was going to say that there are still some good references to food. That's obviously part of your favorite topic to write about. And we have only, out of all the books we had when you were here, and actually we found these in a box when we were taking inventory. We thought we had sold out of them. We still have 8 signed copies of The Best Cook in the World if somebody wants to call in and get those. But we are just, again, your references to food and everything were just still lovely, in your metaphors and your similes about food. One of the other, I thought, really just laugh out loud stories was about the alligator hunting. When you said that, when you fell out of the boat, that alligator was looking at you like you were a Boston butt or something like that. Tell people a little bit about that. That's hilarious.
Yeah, this was one of the best things that's ever happened to me was I came along in a time when newspapers were vibrant.
Yeah.
You know, they were important and vibrant, and not that they're still not, but I was working at the crown jewel of American mid-sized papers. I was down at the St. Pete Times in Florida, and the editor was looking for somebody to go on an alligator hunt. and I said, well, hell, I've done that already. And it wasn't legal, but you know, I'd done that. So we went down to Lake Okeechobee, me and a photographer, and we pushed off in 2 little boats. You had to take 2 boats because the folks might have been drinking a little bit. So we needed a rescue boat, you know, to come up, and man,
a designated driver.
Exactly. And it was pitch black and pitch black and raining and mosquitoes. You know, that's the only place on earth down there where it can be raining hard, drumbeat hard, and the mosquitoes will dance between the raindrops and still get you. and so it's a miserable night. But mostly it was just they'd sweep the banks of that rim canal at Lake Okeechobee with these strong searchlights, and there were a million. I mean, there must have been a million reddish orange eyes looking back at us.
Wow.
You know, reflected there, and the plan was to glide up on them and stick them with a harpoon that appeared to me made out of a piece of angle iron, and the harpoon was attached to a styrofoam float and a rope. The barb would break off, the float would take off, and you would chase the float through the water until the alligator got tired, and then you would pull him up, you know, pull him up, and he'd come up out of the water angry and snapping.
Yeah.
And you had to pull him into the boat to kill him.
Yeah.
And then they would shoot him with a bang stick with a .357 shell. It's a very much a conservationists just love this hunt, and a
real sport.
And at some point, I was getting bored where I was at, so I said, let me jump over to that main boat in the middle of the rim canal, 20 feet deep. And I guess I'm not built for gymnastics, because when I pushed off one boat, it wallowed and I missed my jump and sank right down to the mud.
Wow.
And fought my way back up, waterlogged, and by the time I got back up, my clothes all waterlogged. I didn't have the energy to deadlift myself, and it was a high-sided boat.
That's not easy even without.
Right, and I just couldn't do it, and I just kind of hung there waiting to get eaten, and all of a sudden I heard this clicking sound, this click, and then it went like click, shh, click, shh, and I just knew that it was some 12-foot alligator getting ready to drag me down to the bottom. And I turned around to look, and it was the photographer taking pictures as I hung there. And I told him, I said, if I ever get back in this boat, you're a dead man. He said, I'm sorry, man. This is my job. I'm thinking Pulitzer. And if you get eaten, maybe a Nobel Prize. And so I think he was rooting for the alligator. But yeah, it was not a good night. I finally... I tried to swim, but I sunk again. I mean, I was just waterlogged.
Yeah.
And so I kind of hand over to the transom and pulled myself in over the boat motor transom, cut myself all up.
Yeah.
It wasn't my shining moment.
Well, it made a good story.
Yeah, that's what the editor said. One of the editors looked at the other during the front page meeting and said, that didn't exactly go like we planned. And the other editor said, no, it was fabulous.
Yeah, it was much better. Yeah.
So I guess I should have known then that if there is a chance to get you killed, an editor will take it.
We'll take it. Yeah. For a good story, good front page. Well, we talked about some funny things. I wanted to just brag on you a little bit, if you don't mind. You can be self-effacing virtually, I guess. But I was just going to read a couple of sentences I thought were just great writing. This is in Planes, Trains, and Turkeys, and it's even more poignant now with the pandemic about wishing you could go home for Thanksgiving. And I've already been in conversations with our own family, which normally has 30 or 35 people, has always said we're going to be just four smaller nuclear family Thanksgiving this year. But anyway, it's a story where you weren't able to get home, and you said, I'm just going to read for a minute. It says, the fact is, all I was rushing home to rediscover was not lost because the planes did not fly. It unfolded warmly, deliciously, timelessly, just out of reach. And it really is enough to know a thing endures, lives on just beyond your touch, your presence. You can live inside that, knowing that it does. I hope this makes sense somehow, and I hope you all make it home. That's beautiful writing. That's not even a question, really, but that's just a commendation, really. That's just, and it's such a sense of people can just relate to that. I mean, I certainly can relate to that. That's beautiful. Yeah. Where does that come from?
Thank you.
Where does that ability come from?
Well, I think it's just, I think it just comes from knowing that these, I don't want to say traditions because it's more than that, but during COVID, we've lost the last of my mother's siblings. So that great family that has been in, 6 or 7 best-selling books, and their faces are known, not just to people in this county, but they're known all over the world, not because I'm popular, but people in Ireland and Australia cleave to those working people, that notion of working people. And I think there's several thousand copies floating around China, although I'm not exactly sure how it translated, but probably fine. But the last of that great family, my mother is all that is left of that generation that survived the Depression, and so for many years, I would be, I might have been on a story somewhere, and I remember once I was covering the election, the Hanging Chad election down in Florida, and
Yeah.
once I think I was even overseas, and I've eaten many, not many, but several Thanksgivings at the IHOP,
Yep.
and once I had one in the press box at the Texas A&M football game.
Yeah.
And I've, but it was enough to know that that however many hundreds or thousand miles away, that my Aunt Joe and Uncle John were in the kitchen with my mom, you know, taking a turkey out of a pan that she won in a raffle on Highway 21 at a place called Popcorn Service Station. And actually it's called Newsom's, but the guy who ran it, his name was Popcorn. And they had a raffle, and it was enough to know that it was going on, that it endured.
Yeah.
And now this will be the first ever Thanksgiving that, where it will just be my mom and my brothers and I and my sister-in-law. And, it breaks my heart, but that story, while it was written before this, really is important to me now.
Exactly. That's what I thought, how poignant that story is this year. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think so many people, because of COVID, are cheated out of, you were just talking about your extended family. They're cheated out of that now. It's the thing that makes this, except for the loss of life, the most hateful, I think.
Yeah. I think the other, one of the other worst things about it too have been funerals of people that you really wanted to celebrate their life with their family and give them a hug. And we've had several of those in Tupelo, good parents or grandparents, friends of
Right.
mine that but in fact, it's just the 8 of them that, at the funeral home with just being the way you have to be. But that's been another ripple effect that I've really regretted about this year.
Well, a Southern funeral, and I don't want to be a cliche here, but a Southern funeral has its own peculiarities. And, my aunts and uncles, they're all kind of legends in this world.
Yeah.
But they were legendary in their own way. My Uncle James was the last one to die with a real funeral. And the people stood beside the grave in this little country cemetery in White's Gap, and one by one walked up and said, well, he was a talker. And he was the best storyteller in our family. I'm a rank amateur compared to my Uncle James. He would walk through the cemetery, and I'd ask him, Uncle James, why are you wandering in the cemetery at 93? And he'd say, well, son, that's where the widow women are. And but he was a legendary figure. But the ones who have died since then, my Aunt Juanita, my Uncle John, my Aunt Joe, others have had legends of their own.
Mm-hmm.
And they were laid to rest with their mourners behind masks, and
Yeah.
and crowds so very small, and they deserved better than that.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I think, one of the things Shakespeare was my favorite course at Vanderbilt. By the way, you kind of gave Vanderbilt a little easy dig when you said nobody's tearing down the goalposts at Vanderbilt.
Well, I'm sure they'll get to tear down one someday.
But actually, they're playing Ole Miss this weekend. But anyway, one of the things I loved about Shakespeare was that everybody else did too, was just these universal truths that no matter whether it was in 1500, 1600, 2000, right, are true. And family is certainly one of them. And you just do such a wonderful job of capturing that. Barbara Bush said once, and I've repeated this to people this year when we're talking about the election, who's going to win, who's going to lose. I said, right, well, I'm trying to remember what Barbara Bush says. What happens at your house is ultimately more important than what happens at the White House.
Yeah.
Just, you know, trying to take that, try to have some equanimity about that. Well, on a little jollier note, though, and of course you had a whole book on Jerry Lee Lewis, but you do have a maybe what would have been a forward to that book, or maybe a magazine article that you did.
Yeah, it was kind of the making of the Jerry Lee book. I think I did it for Garden and Gun.
Yeah,
and it was. Yeah, it was kind of the first trip I made to introduce myself, and I guess to maybe let Jerry Lee have a look at me.
Yeah.
You know, and my job was to have a look at him and try to decide if he was up to it. You know, I should have known better. Yeah, I showed up, and the first thing I noticed was that the gates to the Jerry Lee Lewis Ranch had a big piano on the wrought iron gate, and pulled into the yard and was set upon by about 14 dogs, none of them bigger than knee high, including more than one Chihuahua. And I went inside, and there was Jerry Lee. He had on pajamas with little pianos embroidered into them, and he just sat down and started telling me stories. And
is he still living?
Yes, he has.
I hadn't heard anything this year that he's made it through this year.
Yeah, well, every few years he passes away, but they correct it by deadline. They get it straightened out by deadline, and he started talking about wives. He's been married 6 or 7 times. He started talking about wives, and he said the meanest one I ever had was Jane. She could hit like a man, and he said she collected these Santa Claus figurines, and she'd hit me with them, and they were heavy, and she'd hit me with them while I tried to come up the stairs to the apartment, and knocked me down the stairs one time, and then he just said, "Ain't that right, Jane?" And I looked around, trying to find Jane, and finally it occurred to me that he was talking to the rug on the floor. It was a mountain lion, or a lion, and he had nicknamed the rug Jane. And yeah, throughout the conversation, he would just say, "Ain't that right, Jane?" And so I kind of knew then I probably should write the book.
Yeah. Well, I recommend that book. I have my own Jerry Lee Lewis story, which I'll just, because I think people might be interested, I'll take it just in 2 minutes. But he came to Tupelo to a dive called the Showboat Inn, which had a murder in it about 6 months before somebody had been found drowned in their swimming pool. And this was a motor inn, with about 40 rooms and a swimming pool, and somebody didn't make it out of there. So I got a call one day from a friend that said, "Jack, do you and Lisa," my wife said, "do y'all want to go hear the killer tonight? He's playing in Tupelo." And I said, "Well, Ed," I said, I'd like to hear Jerry Lee's, but I don't want to go to any place I have to fight my way into or out of to hear it." And I said, that place has got a pretty tough reputation. He said, this was a banker. He said, "Well, I don't think we'll have that problem. We have the loan on the Showboat Inn, and it's overdue, and they promised us a front row table." And I said, "Okay." So we get out our, jeans and our boots, and, we go in. Well, there are about 3 billiard tables in there. The smoke is so heavy, it's about 50% of the total view is, you know, is just smoke.
Right.
We get up there to the front row, and Jerry Lee comes out and just is banging away. I mean, does great, just by himself, one man show, no saxophonist or anything, just, you know, just banging away, playing. And he decides to take a break, and he said, "I tell you what," he said, "I know y'all want to." He said, "Y'all just line up. I'll kiss every woman here that wants to kiss me." So they line up. Now, this would be anti-COVID, of course.
Right.
I'm saying
Right.
there's probably 40 women, all shapes and sizes, that just get, and he on the lips. I mean, it's not a little, you know, peck on the forehead.
Yeah, Jerry Lee don't do a peck on the forehead. Yeah.
So anyway, I got one PS to this story. So then he starts playing again. Well, and I say this very with all sensitivity. A female dwarf was in the audience, and she comes up between the stage and our table, which is about 3 feet, and she had been drinking apparently, and she asked me if I would dance with her, and I didn't want to appear that was something beneath me to dance with her, and so I just looked at my wife, kind of nodded. So we get up in front of Jerry Lee's playing, and I'm dancing, kind of squatted down in a basketball guard, you know, position, trying to stay kind of about her height, and we're dancing. And the local TV station comes in to film the concert. So that night on the 10 o'clock news, you got Jerry Lee Lewis playing the piano, and you got Jack Reed Jr. dancing in front. It was a night to remember. It was a night to remember.
Yeah. I don't even think I could make that up.
No, I couldn't make it up. All right, moving on a little bit more. You said you've been reading a lot, some of the classics, and so just some of your books. You've had time, obviously, this year to do it. Another person that you and I and a lot of people have in common, and again, with the Christmas Carol, Charles Dickens. You've been reading some Charles Dickens, who's just
Sure.
Just a soul mate. Talk a little bit about Charles Dickens and his writing.
Well, you know, I've, like a lot of people, I had a mean English teacher, kind of beat Dickens into us, you know, when I was younger. But A Christmas Carol, as short as it is, knowing that it was written for money, you know, it was written because his editor said, "Look, you need to make some cash."
I did not know that.
You know, but I read it every year about this time of year. And sometimes I'll read it more than once. I think I have Orson Welles reading it on DVD. And the wisdom in it. I mean, we'll just start with the pretty lines. You know, first of all, Marley was dead, comma, dead as a doornail. And then he went on for a sentence or two to talk about a doornail being dead. And but the scene in the book where Marley drifts in to the bedchamber, rattling and clanking because he is bound with chains, and attached to those chains are the lock boxes and timepieces that ruled his life. And you know, and he says he forged this chain link by link with his inability to see the suffering of humankind around him, and wasting his own life, you know, in pursuit of greed. And there's just a beauty in that, you know, just a beauty in it. And the line where the two poor children, the street urchins, are there, and he says, you know, they're and I'll misquote it all to heck, but their names are want and ignorance.
Yeah.
And you can pay for them now, or you can pay for them later. But just the beauty and the kindness. And I hate to, you know, to talk like that really about literature, but the beauty and the kindness is a soaring kind of thing. that just lifts you up and takes you with it, just like those ghosts drag, Scrooge across the heavens, and I just think it's one of the most remarkable things. I have an old copy that's 100 years old in my office down in Fairhope. I've got an old raggedy cypress house down there in Fairhope, and I take that book out and I'll read it in July.
Yeah.
But it's one of my true favorites.
A little later, just next to that in that conversation are some words that for 25 years we have quoted in our newspaper on Christmas Eve here in Tupelo in the Daily Journal, and it says, it reads, we appreciate your business. Thank you for supporting our local business, and the people who work here, thank you, and what we can, and we try to get back. But we quote this line. It says, "Business," cried the ghost, "mankind was my business. The common welfare was my business. Charity, mercy, forbearance, and benevolence were all my business. The dealings of my trade were just a drop of water in the comprehensive ocean of my business." We've run that for 25 years, just as Reed's kind of, hopefully people see the soul of our business too, is not just making money, but putting it in. Well, those are just some other examples. I mean, it doesn't get much better than To Kill a Mockingbird and A Christmas Carol to get your talking about them. Anything else you'd like to we're coming up on about an hour, and I appreciate you giving us an hour. I know your fans do too. Anything else you want to chat about with people? What's going on? What are you going to be doing next when there is a next?
A lot of writers say, well, I've really enjoyed this solitude. Not a lot of, but some of them say, I've enjoyed the solitude. I've enjoyed, having the time off. I haven't. I feel like there is a heavy blanket just weighing down on me all the time during this, but I also I write for a living, and I've been really fortunate. We've lucked into some bestsellers, thank goodness, because I've found that oddly enough, people do not want you to write books if you write unsuccessful ones. And
you're talking about publishers.
Publishers do not want you to write books if you write a good string of unsuccessful ones. So I've always had a great platform to do this. But during this COVID thing, I started 2 books. Not, of course, they began before COVID, but this collection that we have now really came out fairly quickly, about 9 months or less, and started getting it together and everything as as COVID settled on us. So we thought it was a good book for people to not you can't escape from this, but it would be a good book for the times. It would be a good book for the times. But the other book that I had started even before this, much like the great Mississippian Willie Morris.
Oh, great storyteller.
Willie was so kind to me. He took me to eat catfish once at a place outside Jackson, and he took in a bottle in a brown paper bag, and I don't remember seeing anybody else drink any of it, but I remember Willie, when he walked out, he became the first human being I've ever seen in my life to hit both sides of the door jamb. He hit the left side, and then he hit the right side, and then he finally centered himself and made it out into the parking lot. But he was
inspired by your good company, I'm sure.
Yeah, I guess that. But talk about eloquence and
Yeah.
all that. But but um, but I had always been envious, not of Willie's better known books, but I was always kind of envious of the fact he got to write a dog book.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I think all Southern writers need to write a dog book,
Yeah.
unless they are cat people, and then of course they have no soul. So I wanted to write a dog book. So about 3 years ago, I inherited a illegitimate Australian Shepherd. He was starving to death up on the ridge line up here on the behind the farm, and he was almost gone. And he was a pack dog, a stray, and
Yeah.
he had fought and won and fought and lost, and he was all tore up. And I just went and got him. I knew it was a bad idea when I went and
Yeah.
scooped him up and brought him home. And but he turned out to be the best dog I've ever known. And I mean, a terrible dog in many ways, but a brilliant dog.
Yeah.
And yet incredibly stupid at the same time. And he's just my buddy. And more than that, in a bad time, he was a antidote. And so I wrote I spent year and a half, 2 years working on his biography. My mama named him. We had a cousin, a kind of a homely cousin, who had a bunch of freckles.
Yeah.
And my grandfather nicknamed her the Speckled Beauty. And so when my mother saw the dog, she just looked at him, and this was several months after he'd been here. She just took a look at him and said, "Well, we'll call you the Speckled Beauty." So the name of the new book will be it'll come out next fall.
Okay.
And it's called The Speckled Beauty. And it is, I will say right now on the record, that it is the best story about a one-eyed, illegitimate Australian Shepherd that has ever been written.
I have no doubt. Well, I hope you will. I hope we won't be virtual then. I hope we can see you in person.
Wouldn't that be fun? Well, yeah, we need to. Well,
either way, let's count on it.
I'll commit to it right now.
Right.
I'll be so happy to get out of the house. I might just move into Tupelo for a little while.
Well, we'll come get you. We'll meet you in Jasper or Hamilton or something. And
I got beat up in Jasper one time, but we'll tell that some other time.
Oh, say that. I got a ticket there once, but that's not nearly as exciting.
Well, I don't know. Cheaper, maybe. I don't know.
Well, Rick, thank you. Thank you for your generous time, and thank you for your friendship, and for your and thank you for this book and contributed. Give us something to read and enjoy during this time. And take care of yourself and your family, and we will keep in touch. Like I said, I just am one person representing a whole lot of people around here that really enjoy your contributions to our lives and the literary world. And our bookstore is fortunate to have you as a friend. Thanks so much, and stay safe.
No, y'all too, and I look forward to seeing y'all.
All right, take care. Bye.
All right, you too now. Bye-bye.